Every level you can find.
Now I got to give them a cookie or something. Space, or talked about planets. That would just interest me to no end. It was my favorite subject, and of course I was always interested in airplanes and flying and things like that. So it just kind of naturally came together that I went and became an engineer, and then I decided to apply as an astronaut. And of course it took me many years, and it took me a lot of hard work, but eventually I did get selected. So it started at a very young age. It's just an interesting subject for me.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, you guys, are you ready for some questions from some fantastic students from the D.C. metro area?
Well, that's a great question, and that's easy for me to answer because I was an engineer who worked at NASA, and I worked at NASA for 9 years as an engineer, and then I worked in mission control. So if I did not become an astronaut, I would still be working for NASA. It's a fantastic place to work. It's got so many interesting jobs, not just astronaut. It has engineering jobs. It has scientists, jobs for scientists, doctors, researchers, all kinds of folks. It's a great place to work.
Yeah, Nicholas, that's a great question, and there is a ton of research going on up here. In fact, during our increment, there's going to be over 200 experiments going on. And a lot of those experiments, they range from ones that we don't have a lot of involvement in, such as the alpha magnetic spectrometer, which is looking for the origins of the universe. What we do is help keep the station running, and it utilizes the power and the data and the communication streams to bring that data down to the ground. Then there's experiments where we're more involved, so we're actually executing the experiments in conjunction with the principal investigator down on the ground. So, for example, fluid flow type experiments and how they move in different shaped vessels. That's another one that we'll work on. And then there's the experiments where we're very involved in because we're the guinea pigs. And so there's a lot of those where we're trying to figure out what happens to the human body up in microgravity, such as our spines expand. And so we'll do things like we'll take ultrasounds of our spines, and again, that'll be working in conjunction with people on the ground that are going to take that data and analyze it, and hopefully that'll help us decide or learn how we can protect astronauts, maybe one of you someday when we do a long duration flight to Mars or beyond.
Great question.
Yeah, that's a good question. When we launch and we arrive here on the space station, our body goes through a lot of changes. And then, of course, when we return back to Earth, our body goes through a lot of changes also. And so it's a good question. It's a toss-up on which is more difficult or which is harder on the body. I've been through both several times, and I can tell you when we land, the biggest thing that I notice is I feel very dehydrated. We lose a lot of the fluids up here when we get into space because of the lack of gravity. A lot of the blood shifts to our head, and our body doesn't need all that fluid, so it releases all the fluid by urinating more and just evaporation and sweating it out. Of course, when we get back to Earth, the gravity is back, so it pulls a lot of the blood back into our legs, and we need that fluid again. So I always feel very dehydrated. And of course, your vestibular system, you feel dizzy. You feel like you've been kind of on a carnival ride for a few weeks. Your muscles and your bones have atrophied or gotten weaker over a long period of time. But of course, we exercise a lot to try to minimize that. So your body goes through quite a few changes, either when you're on your way up or on your way down.
Every level you can find. Every level you can find. Every level you can find. Yeah, you definitely need to study the math, the science, the engineering in school. Most of us have a background in that, though there are astronauts that don't have that kind of a background. There's teachers out there. So a lot of people are involved in the astronaut program, but math is certainly important, so I highly recommend keep studying it.
To get here, and we've of course also had a lot of fun doing all the really cool things that we've been fortunate enough to do. But I guess the question is, all this hard work and all this time and waiting, and for us that are going to wait so long, is it worth it?
Yes. Yeah, no, it is definitely worth it. It is the most, sometimes though the science, the results from what we're doing up here take a little time because we collect a lot of that data, we send it down to the ground, and then the scientists, they need to have time to look at that data, to analyze it, and to come up with some results on that. So a lot of what we're doing, you may not see the results for that until 2 years from now. And so, you know, there's going to be a lot of big accomplishments just by keeping the space station running. We've got more visiting vehicles that are going to be coming up here. We've got we just had Orbital come up. We're going to have SpaceX coming up soon, then another Orbital. We've got Russian Progress vehicles coming up, and I'm sure there's going to be some more EVAs that are going to be planned this year as well. So it's always busy, and I expect a lot of great things are going to happen this year.
Nick, you've got a question?
Yeah, hey guys, I was wondering if you could kind of share with the audience here. We talked about working out and trying to prevent bone loss and muscle atrophy.
It's a team event. It's a team sport. So I think it's very important growing up to play team sports, football, baseball, basketball, soccer, hockey, all those different sports. I think it gives you a big advantage to learn to play with your teammates, to work with your teammates, to work together to achieve a common goal, because that's what we do up here. It's exactly what we do up here. When you're on a mission, you're working with your crewmates, you're working with the folks on the ground, you're working with the scientists, and it's one big team, one big happy family, and you have to learn to work together. And the only way you're going to move forward and accomplish the goals is by working together. So I think it's directly related, the team sports and the missions that we do. And growing up, I played a lot of sports. I played football, I played basketball, and lots of different things, mostly in the street with my friends, but also some organized sports in the school.
What aspect of the training have you enjoyed most?
Yeah, for me, that's an easy one. I enjoyed the EVA training. I enjoyed spending time in the suits, in the water, and it was just absolutely fantastic when you came up here. We weren't scheduled to have an EVA. Unfortunately, we had some problems with the station, with the cooling loop, external cooling loop, and so we had to go outside in December and fix it. And so getting to take that training, all of that training that we spent down on the ground and apply it up here was absolutely fantastic.
Hey, Mike, Rick, Drew down here back on Earth. I had a question, actually, I was going to ask you, rather than just floating around there sitting, I was wondering if you could do some acrobatic tricks for us.
Now I got to give them a cookie or something. The Russian segment. Here in the U.S. laboratory, there's a lot of different science racks. We have an exercise bike to our right. On our left, we have it's a glove box, a microgravity science glove box. So there's a science experiment in there right now. We have freezers off over here. Right over the camera, again, you can't see it. We have so to speak, a galley where we get our drinking water and fill up our food bags and rehydrate our water, I should say. So this is a very busy place. This is kind of the center of the U.S. segment right here, this U.S. laboratory.
Fantastic. Well, Mike and Rick, we're really proud of both of you, what you're doing to help advance our civilization through space travel. And you guys look really great. We wish we could be there with you, especially my ASCAN buddies, wish they could be there with you. But we look forward to you coming back home sometime soon. We'll get you a nice, greasy. And we probably have 30 seconds left for a stupid astronaut trick.
I'll hold the microphone while he does it.
All right. You guys look great. Thank you so much.
He can be trained. Thanks, guys.
Physics. I'm a Navy test pilot now, or at least I was doing that until a couple months ago. But I did physics in college and high-energy physics in graduate school. And for me, while I probably won't be doing a lot of proton, anti-proton collisions in space, the real nice thing about physics, from my perspective, is you develop the skills to solve a lot of different problems. And you really break it down to the fundamentals and try not to get too buried in the details initially, and you understand it at a higher level. And the simpler the explanation, probably the more correct that explanation is, and that's what helps me in physics. But I think Jessica's got a different perspective from her biology background.
Sure, and that I think for me was always the driving force behind all of that. Whether or not that will relate exactly to what we do, we're going to all be up there doing a multitude of tasks when we're in space. The scientific training I hope will help me, solve problems and really learn how to think critically for any.
Open, so then you got good grades in elementary school and high school, and then you can choose any college that you'd like to from there. You'll have those good grades to be able to get you into school. So
He's very involved in sports. I was a Cub Scout when I was young, and I have a little boy about your age that's also a Cub Scout. So for all of you, scouting, I highly recommend.
Look at things that human eyes just don't normally look at. So I think it's really cool that you can't even imagine yourself that age, let alone doing what they're doing. Take a class that you don't know if you can pass. You may have to apply to a school that you don't know that you can get into. It'll become easier. At least it's a familiar feeling that you know that if I feel this, I know that I can accomplish this. Because another time I was sitting on a plane looking out a window, being scared and wondering if I could do this, was earlier this year flying to NASA. I felt like I was 18 years old again, going to college, and I was scared. I didn't know if I could get this job. I was coming down to interview to be an astronaut. But I thought to myself, you know what? I've had this feeling before, and it went okay, so I know I can do it this time. But the key is that you can't give up. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter what background you have. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't